Hey, what's up everybody? Mark MacKinnon here. Today is part 2 of the video series that I'm creating about creating a character in Anime 5e role-playing game. In the first session, we talked about Session 0 and how important it was to understand the concept of discretionary points that are used to pay for your ability scores, and today's topic, which is selecting your player race. And so look at Table 3 in the book. Now this gives the different race costs for all the different 14 races that are in Anime 5e, as well as the race breakdowns in traditional 5th edition, your dwarves, your elves, your humans, and whatnot. And so the discretionary points you have left over after paying for your ability scores, you can use those to apply to a choice of a race template that gives you a framework on what kind of features and benefits the race has. Now, race costs run in Anime 5e from the fairy, which is the least expensive at 4 points, all the way up to the parasite, which is 16 points, is the most expensive. Now, if you don't have enough points to pay for a race choice, for example, say you were assigned your ability scores during Session 0 and ended up spending 78 of your 80 points, so you only have 2 points left, well, you can either choose one of two options. Actually 3 options. You can reduce some of your ability scores if you want to in order to get more points back, and that's always an option. You can also assign some defects to your character. These are flaws that are going to give your character a disadvantage in some way, and because they have a disadvantage in a point-based system like Anime 5e, you're going to be able to take those disadvantages, convert them into extra discretionary points that you can then use whenever you want to get a race selection. Or, of course, the third option is you can go with a raceless character or modify an existing race. So every race is going to have a level of special abilities and features and benefits that they can do. And you can either say, well, maybe I don't need this one or I don't need this one to reduce the race cost down. Or you can design a raceless character and just say, well, I'm going to be a fairy, but I'm not going to have any of these advantages or disadvantages. I'm in a fairy by name only, but then I'm going to have either specific things chosen by attributes that you're going to buy individually, or maybe you just won't have any features. Now, of course, fairy makes it a little bit difficult because they can fly, but maybe you want a fairy with no wings, in which case, yeah, sure, go ahead. You can create a raceless fairy, and you have that option. It's important to note that humans are not a raceless category. Humans are a very much defined race in 5th edition, and you end up getting a +1 to all your ability scores, plus you get an additional language. So that pool of points that cost for a human is actually 7 discretionary points in order to be a human. A true raceless, you can be anything from a slime to a Nekojin to a dwarf or an elf. All of those can be raceless. You're just not going to have any built-in advantages that come from that race. So let's take a look specifically at the Nekojin choice. So this is an ability package of features and benefits, as well as drawbacks, that add up to 8 discretionary points if you wanted to play the Nekojin that's as it's written in Anime 5e. And when you look at the Nekojin template, it's going to give you, yes, there's a text write-up, but there's also a chart that's very convenient that you can see everything that comes with it, at what rank do the different attributes come in, or what rank do the defects come in, and that's going to add up to a total of 8 points. So right off the bat, let's kind of talk about what you get if you're a Nekojin, as an example. So your dexterity is +2. Obviously, if you're a cat species, a cat girl, cat boy, cat gender non-binary, then by having a +2 dex, you're going to add that immediately onto your ability score. So that costs 2 points. That's what it's worth, is 2 points. Just the same way that if you increased your dex by 2 during Session 0 would cost 2 points. Those are 2 discretionary points of your package of 8. You also have, if you are a Nekojin, an edge on initiative rolls. And so the reason why is you're very active, you react very quickly. It's very typical of a cat species, and so you get an edge on your initiative rolls. You're also going to have dark vision, pretty standard for a creature that can kind of see in low light really well. So a dark vision at 60 feet. You also have heightened senses hearing. I mean, we all know that cats, in particular, have exceptional sense of hearing. That's what they're very well known as, and so you're going to have that as a feature. And heightened senses, you might say, well, how is that defined? if you look through the Anime 5e book, there's a section on these attributes, and heightened senses is one of them. Edge is another one, and these come in different ranks, and they cost different number of points per rank. And so heightened senses hearing, it's not really strictly defined of exactly what you can do, and how do you mechanistically define what a cat's hearing is like? It's very, very difficult to do. But of course, anything that comes up regarding the hearing, that you hear noises, you can discriminate between different sounds, that's all a great role-playing tool that you're going to have with your Dungeon Master and the other players as you go on adventures with your Nekojin. You also have Mulligan. This is a great thing. Cats are lucky. We all know cats have 9 lives. Well, what Mulligan is, it's an ability to re-roll dice rolls. And you can choose which dice to re-roll them on. The Mulligan ability attribute is just a really fun way to kind of indicate that lucky aspect that Nekojin have. You also have special movement, and this is going to be cat-like. It's what the special movement's called. This involves always being able to land on your feet and taking reduced damage from falls. As we know, that's very much in line with what cats can do. And so the Nekojin have all of those abilities. And these are the attributes, and these are positive. Now, that totaled up a total of 9 if you were to look at that, but I had said earlier that it was 8. The reason why is that one difference comes in from a defect. This is a flaw that all Nekojin have, and this is they are easily distracted by things that distract cats. So it could be balls of yarn, it could be food, squirrel over there. This is a fun little thing that we give, and that's a bit of a drawback. It's not a huge disadvantage to the character. It's only worth 1 negative point, or it gives you 1 discretionary point back. But it's a fun thing that if you watch a lot of anime shows that have Nekojin, it's very common for them to have this feature. And so all this package of abilities of your attributes plus your defects totals up to a total of 8 points. And as I mentioned early on, if you don't like some of it, maybe your cat's got past the distraction, you can eliminate that defect. But now instead of that racial package costing 8, it now costs 9 because you got rid of that one flaw. Or maybe you have a clumsy Nekojin, certainly possible, and you want to get rid of the +2 dex. Great, no problem. You now reduce the cost of that package down by 2 points. Very customizable, completely up to you. Of course, the advantage of working from a standard foundation is so perhaps from different gaming group to gaming group, you can translate these characters well as, of course, it gives you that foundation that cat people as a race, just like dwarves as a race or elves as a race, they have certain common understandings about it. And these aren't things that are often designed through cultural identity. These aren't learned skills. You notice that Nekojin, for example, don't have skills in particular. We don't assign those because that's very much determined by your individual upbringing, your background. But when it comes to innate physicality of the cats, almost like if you look at a cat or a tiger or whatnot, a domesticated cat, you're going to say there's certain things that are intrinsic traits about that creature. And we want to say the same thing with races. So there are certain things intrinsic to most Nekojin, and that's that pool of 8 points. So we do that breakdown for the 14 that we provide. In addition, we provide a point-based breakdown if you want to bring in the standard 5th edition classes. We do give you those points as well. And so as I mentioned, they range from 4 to 16 that are used from discretionary points. One thing that's really important to talk about when it comes to race in Anime 5e is how we handle sizes. And that is very, very different than what they do in 5th edition. You can play, a 6 or 7 inch tall fairy, or you can play a 30 or 40 foot tall archfiend in the game. Obviously, a massive change in what they can do. And we provide what are called size templates. And these are packages of abilities and drawbacks that are going to be associated with each size. And every size that varies from medium is going to have this package that you're going to apply to your character that's either going to cost 5 points for every size category larger than medium, or is going to return 5 points back for every one that's less than medium. The reason why is being bigger than medium provides a net gain benefit that in order to make sure that the game is balanced, someone who's going to play a large creature, say ogre-sized, or huge creature, anyone who's going to play a character of that size and that race with that ability, they're going to have certain based-in abilities that are going to give them that advantage as a net pool. Yes, there are some disadvantages to being huge. I mean, you're not going to be able to go in and sleep in a nice cozy in bed during your travels if you're 30 or 40 feet tall. You're going to be very obvious. It's going to be difficult to blend into a crowd if you are going to be standing out, if you're the size of an ogre, 10, 12, 14 feet tall. And so because of this, yes, there are some disadvantages, but there's a net benefit to being big. At the same time, being small, yeah, it makes you harder to hit. It's easier to hide. Like you have advantages of being small, but your movement's going to be less. I mean, if you think about a child, someone who's 5 or 6 years old, hobbit-sized, if they're running around, they can't move at the same speed as someone who's going to be bigger because their steps are going to be much, much smaller. They're going to have that as a disadvantage. They're not going to be as strong when they're hitting. If you ever had a child punch you versus an adult, you'll notice the difference of how much damage you're going to take in the difference between those. So same thing with the fairy. If you're going to be 4 feet tall or 4 inches tall, 8 inches tall, you're going to have a net pool of disadvantages in Anime 5e. We have several races that are above medium and several that are smaller. Most are medium, of course, just like standard 5th edition, but slimes are smaller. You have as I mentioned, your fairies are going to be smaller. And on the bigger category, you have your demon naga, which are like a demon naga mixture race. Your archfiends are going to be larger. And so you're going to have some that are bigger, some that are smaller. And this is 5 points for either returned or cost from your discretionary pool for every category you are away from medium. Very, very different. That's a section that you're going to have to take a close look at. And if you don't want to use it, if you're a standard 5th edition player and you think the concepts of, well, why do I get an advantage to hit someone when I'm small? Or why am I at a disadvantage to hit someone when I'm large? If that doesn't make sense to you, you can't follow the flow of the speed increase, the throwing distance damage increase, the penalty to your armor class. If that doesn't make sense to you, you could just ignore all of the race, the size advantages throughout the entirety of Anime 5e. I mean, we built it in assuming that this race size is an important aspect of the game, but you can throw it out. That's a great thing about a point-based system, is the ramifications of not using something just comes down to the points. So if you say, well, yes, I want to play a 12-foot tall character. I want to be a gigantic dwarf or an Azrai that's really big, but I don't want to play around with everything. I want to just pretend that I'm medium in terms of the disadvantages and advantages you're going to get. You can just do that, and because it's balanced through points, it doesn't matter what you look like, so to speak, if there's no mechanistic advantage or disadvantage to the game. And that's where the real strengths come down to from that. Now, there are a couple of variations, as I mentioned. If you're smaller, so halflings from 5th edition are small, they're listed as their speed in 5th edition standard as 25 feet versus, say, a standard of 30 feet. We thought that was a little too fast for someone that might be 3 feet tall, for example. They'd be just scurrying along like crazy. And so every size category away from medium, you're going to be dividing your speed by 2 or doubling your speed if you're going to be larger. So in Anime 5e, a halfling size character, someone that's small, is only moving at a 15 base speed. Or someone who's going to be larger is going to be moving at a 60 base speed, because 30 is kind of the baseline. You can go plus or minus by 5 feet. It doesn't make too much of a difference in Anime 5e. We're not as, the game isn't quite as map focused. And so because of that, a little bit of hand waving is certainly fine. I mean, whether something is 30 feet away or 25 feet away, in a theater of the mind style of role playing, it's not nearly as important as a mechanistic grid style of play. And so your race selection, just to sum, comes from your discretionary points. So you have to pay for that. If you don't have enough points, you either have to choose a cheaper race or go raceless or add on some defects in order to get more discretionary points back. And then the size categories, which are built in already to the 14 different races we provide. But if you want to play maybe someone who's raceless but large or raceless but small, then that's going to have a plus or minus 5 points for every category you are away from medium. So the race selection, so it's a lot of fun. It's really straightforward and simple, and it gives you a little introduction of what's going to be coming down the road, and that is with your attributes and defects. And so when you're looking at the different race pages, which comes right after the ability score, you might not understand everything that comes in there if you're maybe a more standard 5th edition player. But just think of all the attributes as features. So just like a dwarf or an elf would have a feature, you could be maybe having resistance to sleep or resistance to poison. Those are just features you're going to have. Well, we give a point-based framework for these things through attributes, and that'll be coming in our next section. So now that we've finished your ability scores through session 0 and we've done your race, the next thing we're going to do in the next video is moving on to class selection. So thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time.